The night I stood shivering on a cracked sidewalk in Tupelo, Mississippi, clutching two duffel bags under a flickering street lamp, I learned that betrayal cuts deeper than any winter wind. My daughter Ellie had turned her back, her silence louder than the words her husband Travis spat like venom. "We ain't your charity case." I was 60, widowed, and erased by the only family I had left. But life, like the Mississippi River, hides currents beneath its surface, currents that can shift everything. What they didn't know was that I held a secret, a single card tucked away in my past, and when I played it, the world they thought they controlled turned to dust. This isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. My name is Clara Jean Thompson, and this is how I rose from the ashes they left me in. Tupelo in late fall is a watercolor of amber and rust, the air thick with the scent of wet leaves and chimney smoke. It's the kind of town where Elvis Presley's ghost hums through every jukebox, where neighbors wave from sagging porches and the church potluck is a sacred ritual. I'd lived here my whole life, raising Ellie in a clapboard house on Magnolia Street, its white paint chipped but proud. We'd string Christmas lights in November, bake pecan pies until the kitchen smelled like heaven, and dance to Roy's old Johnny Cash records when the summer heat kept us indoors. Roy, my husband, was the heart of it all, his laugh a warm rumble, his calloused hands gentle when he tucked Ellie in. When lung cancer stole him 2 years ago, it was like the sun went out. I sold the house, too haunted by his work boots still by the door, his coffee mug on the counter, waiting for a hand that would never return. Ellie and Travis, her husband of 5 years, offered me a room in their duplex on the edge of town, a peeling rental complex where azaleas fought to bloom against the red clay. I thought it was love, a tether to family when grief threatened to swallow me whole. I moved in with my two duffels, promising myself I'd be no burden. I cooked cornbread and collard, scrubbed floors until they shone, and folded Travis's work shirts with care. I wanted to be useful, to earn my keep. But Travis had a way of making you feel like a stain on his world. His hazel eyes, sharp as a hawk's, tracked me with contempt. He'd scoff when I offered to chip in for groceries, mutter leech when he thought I couldn't hear, his voice low but cutting. Ellie, my Ellie, who once braided dandelions into my hair and begged for one more bedtime story, said nothing. She'd fidget with her phone, her dark curls falling over her face, and murmur, "He's just tired, Mama. Works hard at the mill." I swallowed the hurt, told myself mothers endure, that love means patience. But that night at supper, over a pan of fried catfish I'd spent hours perfecting, Travis broke something in me I didn't know could break. He leaned back in his chair, a beer bottle sweating in his hand, and said, "Clara, this ain't a halfway house. Time you stop mooching off us." The air went still, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly deafening. Ellie stared at her plate, her fork frozen mid-bite. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to keep it steady. He smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "We got our own life. You're in the way. Find somewhere else." My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned to Ellie, my eyes pleading for one word, one glance, anything to anchor me. She whispered, barely audible, "Maybe it's for the best, Mama. For everyone. For everyone." The words landed like a slap. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood, legs unsteady, and walked to the spare room that smelled of damp and regret. I packed my life, 2 duffels, a handful of thrift store clothes, a photo of Roy and Ellie at the county fair, her gap-toothed grin brighter than the Ferris wheel lights. I walked out, the screen door creaking behind me. Ellie didn't follow. Travis didn't look up from the TV. The door clicked shut, and I was alone under that street lamp, the November cold biting my bones, wondering how love could turn to ash so fast. The motel on Gloucester Street was a relic of Tupelo's past, its neon sign buzzing like a dying fly, the word vacancy flickering in pink. I paid for a week with the last of my savings, my hands shaking as I counted out crumpled bills. The room smelled of mildew and despair, the wallpaper peeling like old skin, the mattress sagging under my weight. I lay there that first night, staring at a water-stained ceiling, replaying Ellie's silence, Travis's smirk. I texted her, "I'm okay. I love you." No reply. The next morning I sent another, just checking in. Silence. Days bled into weeks, each one heavier than the last. I applied for jobs. Cashier at the Piggly Wiggly, receptionist at a tire shop, even a diner waitress. But my age was a quiet curse. Overqualified, they'd say, or not a good fit, which was just polite code for too old, too tired. My savings dwindled. The motel's vending machine my only kitchen. The loneliness was a weight, but the shame was heavier. I'd given Ellie everything. Every scraped-together dollar for her school trips, every bedtime story when she was scared of the dark, every prayer when Roy got sick. How could she let me go? One night, desperate for a tether to something familiar, I opened a cardboard box I'd brought from the house. It held fragments of my life, a Polaroid of Roy and me at Graceland, a cracked ceramic angel Ellie made in third grade, a few letters tied with twine. At the bottom, tucked under a faded quilt square, was my mother's journal, its leather cover cracked like parched earth. I hadn't touched it since her funeral 20 years ago, when I'd shoved it away, too raw to face her absence. Something pulled me to it now, a whisper in the dark. I sat on the motel bed, the lamp flickering, and opened it. Her handwriting, looped, careful, like the notes she'd tuck in my lunchbox, felt like a hug. At first it was mundane. Church suppers, gas prices, the ache of missing my father, who died in a mill accident when I was a baby. Then an entry from 1963 stopped my breath. He came again today. Said he loved me but couldn't leave his wife. His name. Clara must never know she's his. I pray she'll forgive me for the secret, for loving him despite the sin. My hands shook. I read it again, then flipped further. Page after page revealed a man, initials only, W.R., a prominent Tupelo businessman who'd loved my mother in shadows. Meetings in Memphis hotels, hushed promises, small cash gifts she hated taking but needed to keep us fed. Then a bombshell. He set up a trust for Clara. If he dies, his lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, will know. It's not much, but it's hers by right. Hargrove. I knew that name from old newspaper clippings, a lawyer tied to Tupelo's elite. My heart raced. I wasn't just Clara, the discarded mother, the widow with nothing. I was someone with a past, a truth, a weapon. For the first time in weeks, I smiled, the kind of smile that feels like a storm breaking. I found Daniel Hargrove through a dusty online directory, his name listed under a Memphis law firm. Too nervous to call, I wrote a letter, my handwriting wobbly but sure, explaining who I was, who my mother was, and begging for answers. 2 weeks later, his voice crackled through the motel's rotary phone. "I always wondered if you'd find me, Clara Jean." The next day, I took a Greyhound to Memphis, my duffel half-packed, fear and hope wrestling in my chest. The bus smelled of stale coffee and diesel, and I stared out the window as the Mississippi countryside blurred past. Cotton fields dusted with frost, billboards for catfish shacks and Baptist revivals. Hargrove's office was a quiet sanctuary of polished wood and leather-bound books, the air heavy with pipe smoke and history. He was older than I'd imagined, his eyes kind but guarded, like he'd carried too many secrets. He handed me a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, addressed to Clara Jean, my daughter, in a precise, unfamiliar script. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter was from William Rayburn, founder of Rayburn Timber, a man whose name graced half the billboards in North Mississippi, lumber yards, community centers, even a wing of the Tupelo Hospital. He confessed everything. The affair with my mother, the regret that gnawed at him, the love he could never claim. "You are my blood," he wrote, "and though I was too much a coward to give you my name in life, I give you what I can in death." A trust untraceable through his estate held bank accounts, stocks, and a small plot of land. Total value just over $1 million. I read it twice, tears blurring the ink, not because of the money, but because I was seen, chosen. "It's yours," Hargrove said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Always was." I sat there, the weight of the truth settling into my bones. My mother hadn't just loved me, she'd fought for me, silently, carrying a secret that could have ruined her in a town like Tupelo. Rayburn, for all his flaws, had left me a legacy. That night back in the motel, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, a smile creeping across my face. Travis and Ellie thought they'd broken me, left me to fade into the cracks of this town. They had no idea I was just beginning. I didn't rush back to Tupelo. I stayed in Memphis for a few days, walking Beale Street, letting the blues from every bar sink into my soul. The wail of a saxophone felt like my own heart crying out, then healing. I wasn't just Clara, the forgotten widow the mother cast aside. I was Clara Jean Rayburn, daughter of a secret, holder of a legacy. When I returned, I didn't go back to the motel. I rented a sleek loft downtown, near the Elvis Presley birthplace, where tourists snap photos and locals sip sweet tea on patios. I traded my faded dresses for tailored slacks and crisp blouses, my gray hair now streaked with auburn, cut sharp and modern. I watched YouTube videos on investing, real estate, and contract law, learning the language of power. I'd never be helpless again. One evening, scrolling through a real estate auction site, I saw it. A distressed duplex complex in Tupelo, the one where Ellie and Travis lived. My pulse thundered. It was listed for unpaid taxes, the owner desperate to unload. I didn't hesitate. With Hargrove's help, I formed an LLC, Magnolia Roots, and placed a bid. It wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was control, a chance to rewrite the story they'd forced on me. 2 weeks later, I won the auction, quietly, legally under the radar. I owned their world, the roof over their heads, the walls they thought kept me out. I sat at my desk, the deed in my hands, and whispered, "Let's see how Travis likes answering to me." The first notice went out a month later. Rent reassessments, lease reviews, standard procedure for a new owner. For Travis and Ellie, the rent tripled, market rates plus overdue fees. I could imagine Travis's rage, his fists clenched, his voice booming through their cramped living room. Ellie called me 2 days later, her voice small and hesitant. "Mama, something's wrong. Our rent's crazy high. Travis is losing it. Can we talk?" I let it go to voicemail, my heart aching but resolute. This wasn't about punishment. It was about consequences, about making them feel the weight of their choices. I drove by the duplex one night, the streetlights casting long shadows. Their Ultima Pro in their window glowed, silhouettes moving, Ellie pacing, Travis yelling, his arms flailing. I lingered a moment, then drove away. Part of me ached for my little girl, the one who'd clung to me during thunderstorms. But part of me knew she had to face the storm she'd chosen. I saw Ellie at the Piggly Wiggly a few weeks later, her cart sparse. Generic cereal, a loaf of white bread, a single can of soup. She looked hollow, her ponytail sloppy, eyes red like she'd been crying. I watched from the next aisle, hidden behind a display of canned peaches, my heart twisting. She picked up a jar of peanut butter, checked her phone, maybe a text from Travis, then put it back, her shoulders slumping. I remembered the girl who'd beg for peanut butter sandwiches, who'd draw smiley faces in the jelly with her finger. Now she was shrinking under Travis's shadow, her light dimmed. I drove home and sat in silence, staring at the loft's exposed brick walls, reminding myself this wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. Ellie had to see the cage she'd built, not just hear me tell her it was there. I became someone new, someone I barely recognized. I joined real estate meetups under a pseudonym, Clara Ray, my auburn hair swept into a sleek bun, my walk purposeful. I listened to investors talk about flips and rentals, memorizing their jargon, asking sharp questions. No one asked about my past. They saw a quiet, composed woman with cash on hand and eyes that didn't waver. The best disguise, I learned, is the truth you don't say. I upgraded the duplex, new exterior paint in a soft sage, better hallway lighting, a community garden with raised beds for tomatoes and okra. The other tenants sent thank you notes, their kids planting marigolds in the garden. Travis didn't notice, too busy emailing the property manager with threats. "This is extortion. I demand to know who's behind this." I smiled at his fury, forwarding each rant with a note. Respond per standard policy, no exceptions. Ellie's calls grew more frequent, her voicemails soft and desperate. "Mama, I miss you. Things are bad. Can we talk?" I didn't answer, not because I hated her, but because she needed to feel the void she'd created. I wasn't the mother begging for a scrap of dignity anymore. I was the woman who owned the ground she walked on. Then one rainy evening, my loft's intercom buzzed. Ellie stood outside, soaked to the bone, clutching a grocery bag like a lifeline. I pressed the door release, my heart pounding. She stepped inside, dripping water on the hardwood, her eyes red and hollow. I handed her a towel and poured chamomile tea, the steam curling between us like a fragile bridge. "He's not who I thought," she whispered, staring into her mug. "He's obsessed. Thinks someone's out to get us. He checks my phone, follows me to work." I stayed silent, letting her words fill the space. She admitted she'd found my building through a security notice tied to magnolia roots. "I miss you, Mama, but I don't know how to fix this." My voice was soft but steady. "You didn't just let Travis push me out, Ellie. You stood with him." Her face crumpled, tears spilling over. We sat in silence, the kind that holds both pain and possibility. When she left, she hugged me, her arms trembling. I held her gently, like a bird I wasn't sure would stay. The door closed, and I sank onto the couch, the warmth of her tea mug lingering in my palms. Travis unraveled like a cheap sweater. He stormed the management office, demanding the owner's name, his voice echoing through the complex. He sent sloppy emails pretending to be a tenant, fishing for information. When that failed, he turned on Ellie, checking her phone, trailing her to her job at the library. A neighbor reported glass breaking, raised voices late at night. Then came his note, slipped under my loft's door. "I know what you're doing. You'll regret this." The handwriting was angry, uneven, pressing too hard on the paper. I wasn't scared. I was ready. My lawyer sent a cease and desist, backed by evidence, his threatening emails, falsified documents he'd sent to the title office, complaints from other tenants about his outbursts. Travis spiraled, but I protected the complex, installing discreet cameras, fixing leaks, ensuring the other tenants felt safe. Ellie stopped calling, but the building manager reported she'd sold her car, cut utilities to save money. Lights off by 8 p.m., no heat some nights. I should have felt pity, but I felt clarity. This wasn't about breaking them. It was about showing them what they'd built. Then one night, Ellie appeared at my door, holding something that made my knees buckle. My mother's journal, its leather cover worn but sacred. "I found it in my closet," she said, her voice trembling. "I read it. I know about Rayburn. The trust. She set it on the coffee table like an offering. Why didn't you tell me you were helpless? I met her eyes unflinching. I was helpless, Ellie. That night you let me walk away. I had nothing. No plan, no money, no place to cry where someone wouldn't bang on the wall. That journal gave me truth. It reminded me I was worth something, that my mother fought for me in silence. Ellie sank onto the couch, her hands clenched. I've left him, she said. He tried to control everything. My laptop, my bag. I told him no. He screamed, packed a bag, and left. I changed the locks. Pride flickered beneath my pain. You didn't become this daughter overnight, I said. It was small choices, choosing him over truth. She reached for my hand, her fingers cold. I want to try, Mama. I squeezed gently. You see me now. That's a start. Travis's last stand was an email, sent from a burner account. I know about Rayburn, your mother's affair. I'll tell everyone. Your name, your secret. Let's see how you hold up when Tupelo knows what you are. I read it slowly, my stomach churning, but my resolve ironclad. I forwarded it to my lawyer. By morning, Travis received a defamation suit backed by a dossier of his own recklessness. Threatening messages, falsified documents, audio clips of his rants in the complex's lobby. He panicked, fleeing Tupelo with a note to Ellie. You and your mother ruined me. She called me, her voice steady. He's gone. He ruined himself. I smiled softly. You're not small anymore, Ellie. Ellie moved to a studio near her library job, started therapy, and joined a community art class. She painted me a canvas, a magnolia in bloom, its petals bold against a stormy sky. I hung it above my loft's fireplace. We talked more, not daily, but honestly, no pretense. The final piece came in an envelope from Hargrove. The duplex was fully transferred. The lawsuit against Travis resolved. I was free to sell or keep it. I chose to sell, signing the papers on a bright spring Tuesday, the air thick with honeysuckle. Half the proceeds went to a women's shelter named the Eleanor Jean House after my mother, a place for women like me to find refuge. The other half bought a cottage on Magnolia Street, a 2-bedroom with oak trees and a porch swing, room for healing and maybe a tomato garden. Ellie helped me move in, carrying boxes, her laugh light as we unpacked. We made biscuits and gravy for dinner, giggling when she burned the roux and blamed the pan. That night after she left, I stood at my window, tea in hand, moonlight pooling on the lawn. I forgive you, I whispered to myself. I wasn't the fire they tried to douse. I was the spark they never saw coming. I tucked a note in the journal for Ellie. You don't need their love to be enough. You need your truth. Never forget who you are. The clock ticked softly. My tea cooled, but my heart was warm, and I was home. Tupelo hasn't changed much since that spring. The jukeboxes still play Elvis. The azaleas still fight to bloom. But I've changed. I volunteer at the Eleanor Jean House, serving coffee to women who arrive with nothing but hope. Ellie visits often, her paintings brighter, her eyes clear. Travis is a ghost, his threats silenced by his own choices. I walk Magnolia Street now, head high, knowing my worth wasn't given by Rayburn's money or Ellie's love. It was mine all along, forged in silence, tempered by truth. They thought they could erase me, but I became someone they'll never forget. And in that, I found not just a home, but myself. This story is more than a tale of betrayal and redemption. It's a testament to the quiet, unyielding strength that lies within us all, even when the world tries to dim our light. Clara Jean's journey teaches us that self-worth isn't defined by the love or approval of others, but by the truth we hold about ourselves. Her transformation from a grieving, discarded mother to a woman of power and purpose reminds us that no one can take away our value unless we let them. The discovery of her mother's secret and the legacy it unlocked wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming her identity, her voice, and her right to exist unapologetically. Ellie's arc, too, carries a profound lesson. Redemption is possible, but it begins with facing the consequences of our choices and choosing to step out of the shadows we've allowed to define us. The story's heart lies in its message of empowerment through silence, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of strategy, of healing, of knowing when to wait and when to act. Clara's decision to use her newfound power not to destroy but to rebuild herself, her relationship with Ellie, and a shelter for others shows that true strength isn't loud or vengeful. It's purposeful, compassionate, and enduring. For anyone who's ever felt invisible, this story is a call to find your spark, to hold fast to your truth, and to rise no matter how many times life tries to push you down. It's a reminder that you are enough, not because of what you have or who loves you, but because of who you are. Thank you for joining me on Clara Jean's journey, a story of resilience, truth, and the power of a whisper. If this tale moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect on your own strength, please hit that subscribe button to join our community of storytellers and dreamers. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's so much more to come. Tales of triumph, heartbreak, and the human spirit that will leave you uplifted and inspired. Drop a comment below and let me know. Where are you watching from? What did Clara's story mean to you? Have you ever found strength in an unexpected place? Your voice matters, and I can't wait to hear it. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, hold tight to your truth. You never know when it'll light the way home.